Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host in Kansas City, Missouri, as always. And today I have a very special guest. First of all, she's my cousin. I love her. She's hilarious. She's beautiful. Her name is Rihanna, and she is also in Kansas City, Missouri. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, and we can get this conversation going.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you, Jessica, for having me. I am Jessica's cousin, and I love her oh so much. My name is Rihanna, but around Kansas City or hopefully globally soon, you know what I'm saying? I go by ReMC. I host a show. It's called Tipsy Topic Tuesday. On Tuesdays, we drink, we play games, we talk to business owners, brands, people, really anything. If you have anything to talk about, you come talk with me, play games, we expose your business and brand in a very fun way. So we drink a little bit. We have so much fun. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram at ReMC_. I'm right there.
All right. So one thing I know me and you have been talking about a little behind the scenes is that being somebody who is kind of, in the public eye, trying to be more known in the public eye, a lot of people just kind of see you, they see your beautiful pictures, they see the stuff you do, but they don't really know a lot of the things that you have gone through, overcome, and what it took to actually get you where you are today and where you will be going. And so if you wanted to just start by sharing a little bit about some of the things that you've had to overcome and how it's affected you now.
You know what? That's a really good question. So loaded, but very important. Because yes, I do think that people see me and I have people be like, oh, well, you're Barbie or you're perfect. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, it's something to be said when you tell people don't judge a book by its cover, because I realize in those statements that people don't know a lot about myself and my upbringing. So I'll talk a little bit about me. I'm 29, so I'll be 30 in June, Gemini. I do take gifts, early gifts. I celebrate half birthdays, third birthdays, everything in between.
Girl, wow.
I do celebrate all these things. But aside from that, I am the youngest of 8, a very, very blended family. My mom and dad have been married my pretty much entire life. I think, if not my entire life, early on, but basically my entire life. So I'm 29. They've been married 29 years, whatever. But my family's extremely blended. So my oldest sister is about 40, in her 40s. Look, I know this sounds so terrible because I barely remember my own age sometimes, but the point is there's a 28, year difference between me and some of my siblings. It is very blended. But as far as my parents go, I'm the only one between the two of them. So growing up in my household, it's a very odd dynamic when your parents are married, because you kind of get that perfect picture from everybody else. People look at you, especially when you grow up as an inner city. I wouldn't even consider myself an inner city kid. I went to Raytown and then I went to Lincoln, which is one of the better schools in the Kansas City School District. But I remember being with my cousins sometimes, obviously not Jessica, even if, honestly, if you said something to me, I'd be like, it's okay, we're fine. But I remember, points growing up where my cousins would be like, well, you don't have it as bad as us, or if I talked a little too white, as they would say, or, anybody would say. I'm not even going to just say cousins when I say they. When I say they, I mean just people in general. But if I talked a little bit too white, or if I did things that were Oreo, people would say, like, you forget where you come from, or you're perfect, or whatever. And I think it's something to be said about how Black people in general conduct business, because our family operated in a very what happens here stays here kind of narrative. And I think we see this across the board. And whereas my parents were married and we did take family trips and we had all these good moments, you have on the flip side a whole other dark side that people don't know. A lot of people don't know and didn't know until most recently when I started speaking about my father being an alcoholic. And my father was not just an alcoholic who, got drunk, and the typical picture where you might see them on the streets and just doing, drunk people stuff. That's not how it worked. He was an alcoholic. He's what I would consider functioning for quite some time. So he would drink, go to work, might be late to work, but you did enough work to keep this job. And then I kind of, as I got older, started to notice things were a little bit weird and a lot more off than I knew. So my dad was abusive to me and my siblings. And I won't go into a bunch of details about that, but one of the things that I find most interesting and why I'm compelled to kind of tell my story is because a lot of people, because my siblings and myself didn't really speak out about it, or when, because they're a lot closer in age, I'm at the bottom, they would speak out, and people like, no way, they're married, things are perfect, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of got to a point where, as growing up, it was like, just shut up, like be quiet, don't say these things. And then when I got older and I kind of started to lash out, I would say lash out because it wasn't pretty. I was lashing out. People were like, you're crazy. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? You tripping. But for me, the most important takeaway is the adversity that comes with that, because while all of my siblings, as they got older, they kind of got grown and gone, is what I would say. I found my tribe. And I talk a lot about relationships and building just a tribe. I feel like sometimes we forget that we are who we lean on sometimes. And I'm very thankful for my best friends, Rhonda and Raven. We call ourselves Triple R, Rihanna, Rhonda, Raven. But around the times where things were tough with me and I felt like I couldn't say things to other people, or I shouldn't say things to other people, I really developed a true sisterhood with these girls. And it to have people close going through things that are so similar, you're not alone. And I think that sometimes when you have these unique situations where people look at you and think, your parents are married, your mom takes very good care of you, so what, do you have this thing? They think that those things don't affect you, and they do. But you learn to wear your black girl mask. You learn to put on your Supergirl, Superwoman cape, and you just go on about life. And then it's really difficult and weird because now you're fighting on these two fronts because people are like, it's perfect, you're tripping. So I'm just really thankful for sisterhood in general, because my best friends have really helped me get through adversity in that way.
And I think what you said is really important. One, knowing the people that you have around you, having that village, having people who you can lean on. But I think earlier on, you said something that I really wanted to kind of touch back on, which is, you know, because you come from a family where it has a mother and a father and they may be living in the same house, it doesn't mean that everything is perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, sometimes I think it can get difficult when everyone sees our situation different than how we have to experience it. But
Yeah.
we're the only one that actually has to experience that situation. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to ask you, as you started getting older and as you started lashing out, what did that do for you? How did that kind of shape the kind of teenager and early adult that you became?
So it's interesting because my lashing out didn't actually start till about 2020. My relationship with my mom has always, up until last year, been extremely close. My mom has always been my best friend. Um, and that kind of creates a little bit of issues when itself, because you do latch on to your best friend's problems, right? So not only am I judging my dad as a child, I'm judging him as, yeah, do my mama, X, Y, and Z, and not to get into their situation. But so as a teen, I kind of, because I was the last in the line, I kind of looked at everybody's issues and I turned into the model child, the child who would not give any problems. I could see that this one did this and this one did this and this one did this. And so just kind of listening to my mom reprimand them or talk to them or work with them. And I really don't mean, I hope in saying this, people don't feel like my whole existence was just terrible. But I feel like adversity is what really shaped me. But I turned into a pleaser. And I've always been naturally supportive, but I turned into somebody who, if I remember never even second guessing college, right? Like I've always been an artsy kind of person. And I probably should have gone and done hair or something like that. But I remember my mom telling me early on that you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a good job. And I never questioned that process. I just kind of turned into the model child who did what they were supposed to do, because that's how things are, are all right. And I didn't, as I got older, when you realize that those habits turn into people pleasing, it really gets confusing and conflicting because that spills over into your other relationships as well. So once I got old and started lashing out, I really went to therapy. And a lot of people shy away from therapy, and I promise you, it's not as scary as it sounds because I'm not gonna lie. When I first went, I was the person who was like, what you here for? You know, I know I came to your job, but what you want? But once I really let my guard down and started to let this man, because I went with a man and not a woman, a white man at that. And I know a lot of times people say go with somebody who looks like you, but for me, it was important to sit with somebody who did not experience blackness in the way that I did, so that I could see that it was something else. But once I really started to embrace the things and the tools and the things that he was saying to me, I realized that you have to think about what you can and can't control, and you have to learn to control the controllable. And a lot of anxiety and depression and things like that come from you dwelling on what you can't change. And I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm perfect, because I was still, at but I'm a huge accountability person, and the biggest piece for me was going to see a therapist, because that is who doesn't know you and who can really help you. We lean on our friends, and I do lean on my friends so much. I love them so much. But a lot of times, especially when you learn about yourself, and me, I'm a pleaser. And when people tell you to do certain things, you might not question those processes if you know that it's good for you. And so that's why it was important to me to go to therapy, because you don't know me, and you can challenge me to critically think without giving me a solution. And that's what I needed, versus just kind of having somebody write down, this is what you need to do.
And I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I mean, I'll be the first person to be sitting on somebody's couch, like, help me work through these issues. But I do think that's such an important topic to even touch on, because in the Black community, sometimes it's like you don't want to tell. It's like you're not about to go tell a stranger your business. Like you said earlier,
What they
what
say
happens here stays here. This is our little secret, and let's make sure that we, try to fix it, when all actuality, a lot of times whole families need to be sitting on couches, because there are so many things, and not just your family, our family, but just families in general.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of like there's a lot of things that need to be talked about and healed, so that it doesn't go into the next generation, so that when we all have children, we are not raising our children from those same broken and hurting places. And sometimes the hurt. What did you say?
I said hurting places. Yeah. I'm like, you preaching.
Yeah. So sometimes it's like, and it's not always just like that we're pointing the finger at one specific person, because I remember a long time ago, somebody told me that sometimes people can love you the best way that they know how. And sometimes that best way is broken and hurting and is wrapped up in addiction and abuse, because it's just something that was not healed or taken care of a long time ago, before you ever even entered the picture. And so I did want to ask you, what does the healing process, what has that been looking like for you? Because I know you never really get to, like, healing is not just a destination, like I made it and I'm good.
Yeah.
So what has it been looking like now, as you've realized some of the things that you were struggling with and you started going to therapy? What does that look like on the practical side?
I think on the practical side, the first step, and even before therapy, I knew that in order to have healthy relationships, and shout out to my studies at Mizzou, because sociology, women and gender studies, and familial studies really challenged me, and taught me what it meant to be ethnocentric, and exactly what you said, taking myself out of my shoes and trying to understand other people, even if I don't forgive you. And I think that people assume that because you understand something that I have to forgive you. I don't have to forgive you because I understand what you did. I just don't take it personal at this point, but I don't have to mess with you. You know what I mean? So for me, the first step was, all right, realizing you're smart, you're all these things. It's time for you to be accountable. And you have to be first. For me, it was being accountable in my friendships, realizing that I'm not perfect and I've done things wrong, and righting my wrongs and being flexible with my friendships, because a lot of times we say we want something, but we can't be what we need to be. So how do you expect to have people who love you if you're not learning them and their love language. So I'm really big on, like, even if you're my homegirl or I'm dating you, or even my daughter, I've had her take like the love language test, because a lot of times we think about how we want to be loved and we push that off on other people. And so for me, it was just being accountable for my circle and being the friend that I wanted to be, being the friend that I wanted people to be to me, and being there for people that I wanted to be there, in that same way, but also trying to understand their love language, because we can have all the good intentions in the world, but if you're doing it wrong, you're just screaming into an empty room because you don't know who you're dealing with. So for me, the first step was just accountability. And then it was focusing on growth. And when I say growth, I don't mean financial growth. I don't mean anything like that. When I say growth, I realized that after college, I needed to be a life learner. I think that, we grow up and we're like, all right, I'm here, but there's still work to be done. And yes, you given the Bible and it tells you how to live and everything else. But I knew that I wanted to know what it was like to be a woman from other women. My mom, I love her to death. She raised me to be so strong. And we will talk and she'll say, I raised you to be stronger than I ever could. And I commend her for that. And Black women do that every day. But I knew that my mom's story was hers. My best friend's mom's story was hers. And all these different people's stories was hers. I wanted to start to read about other people and what it was that they had to share. So the first book I read, actually, I'm going to say, I got it as a gift. It was Michelle Obama's Becoming. And I was like, this is a gift. I'm not going to waste this person's money. So I'm going to read this book. And it was just really her autobiography. But I fell in love with her book because she talked about her life. But one of the things that Michelle Obama's mom did was she was very big on letting Michelle and her brother solve their own problems. And even though she was their mom, she was just kind of a facilitator. And she was very strategic about making sure that they could do their own business. And then watching Michelle Obama grow up and step into her right. Obviously, she could have tailored this story. It doesn't matter. It really resonated for me. But every step in her book, she had a boyfriend and she went to college and she realized this doesn't serve me. And so I can't do this no more. And it didn't have to be a big deal. And then she had all these different things that she had to be accountable for. But she always in this book kept her like in the center of everything. And it really spoke to me because she obviously talked about her relationship with Barack. And she talked about a part in the book, and this is what helped me like go to therapy. She talked about a part in the book where she's like, we hit a rocky patch and we were going to go to therapy. And I was going to therapy with the mind frame that they were going to be like, Barack, you. And when they went to therapy, the therapist was like, get your own life. You know what I mean? But to me, it was just like, here it is. This woman who I hold in such high regard can show up for herself, can be accountable for herself, and then follow her own sword and keep it moving. That was inspiring to me to where I was like, all right, I'm on the Gabrielle Union and then Elaine Welteroth and all these different books. And then I started branching out to other things. But I really have made a point to be a life learner, even if it's not necessarily physical, textbook, oh, you're reading psychology or whatever. And then giving myself the grace and space to know that I'm gonna fall short. Look, I just told you I will rah hoorah in a minute. I ain't too far. I ain't at the cross yet. I'm still a little further from the cross. God ain't done with me. But accountability and just being a life learner and just giving myself the grace to know that I am going to mess up more often than not. But don't charge it to my heart. My heart is in the right place. My head, it be over there sometimes.
And I think that's such an important part of healing though, because so often we do want to only point at the other person. And so I know I learned that when I was going to counseling after I went through a divorce, was I was ready to sit down and talk about all the horrible things that he did to me and why he was so this and this. And we spent so long in that session talking about how I grew up, my parents, my father, and I'm like, what does this have to do with anything?
But he did me wrong. What's wrong?
Yes,
you hear me?
And it was so confusing to me. But as I continued on, I realized that sadly, people are going to do things to us, and it's on us to decide how we are going to respond, how we're going to move forward, how we are going to heal from that and keep going. And I think that's why I love your story, because you're talking about it in the positive light, right? Because
Yeah.
so easy we can look back and just be like, I can't believe this person did this to me and this
Mm-hmm.
and this. But the beautiful part is when you can sit here and talk about it and not be broken and not
Yeah.
be in a corner and not be like ready to
Yeah.
go shoot somebody. And it doesn't
Well,
mean,
I had to cross them bridges.
but it doesn't mean that we were never in that place.
Yeah,
It
and
just
that's
means
true.
that we were able to muster something up. And like you said, as Black women, we're good at doing that. We're
Yeah.
good at putting on that mask and saying, this is not going to break me, and let's keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and though there's something to be said about just because you can deal with it doesn't mean that you should have to.
You
And
ain't got to.
so I love that you are, speaking about that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, you mentioned earlier on, you were talking about healing and you were talking about forgiveness. And so, what does forgiveness look like to you when you have to forgive people, when you have to move on from the situation? What is that looking like for you now?
Well, first off, let me say that I told y'all God ain't done with me. So me and my daddy is always gonna be like Batman and Joker. Okay? Just because God ain't done with me yet. I might move past that. But a big piece is knowing what spaces I can and can't put myself in. That was a big part of my healing. And knowing what my triggers were. Because the thing is, breaking traumas and bad things, trying to grow, what people don't tell anybody is that it gets so damn lonely. And I come from a big family. We did, so much together. Me and my mom traveled all the time together. And I haven't said that my dad went to jail for 6 years or something like that, and he got out in 2020. And that's kind of why I said, like, I was growing as a woman, and I didn't realize that I was gonna snap until he came home, because I had him there so much that when he was gone, I didn't realize that our whole family took a breath of fresh air and we were able to be with each other. So then when he came back, it was like, really? Like, we worked so hard to get away from all this crap. And now everybody's back here. But I had decided, my daughter's 8 now. So he was gone for 6, 7 years. My daughter's 1 going on 2 when he left. It was important to me. And he was very present. I started to gain a love for my dad, like a more of a love than I had when my daughter was young, because he was very fatherly with her. And I felt like there was this point of redemption where we could get past all the mess. And then he went to jail. He did not work at all to build a relationship. And I just had kind of decided I wrote it off. So when he came home is when everything kind of like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that this was a problem. And now I'm rambling. I don't even remember what you asked me at this point. But I didn't realize that everything was a problem. And so that kind of snapping point came. But what people don't tell you about growth or about changing those things is it gets really lonely. And that's something that I want people to know, is that when you are overcoming your adversities or you are trying to get past things that hurt you, it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna be there by yourself or with your kid or whatever. And in your mind, I'm doing all this stuff for my kid, but you might get on Instagram, you might get on Snapchat and Facebook, and everybody look like they having fun, and you're like, did I make the right, choice? Did I make the right choice to do this for me and mine? And I'll be the first to tell you have, because when you're overcoming adversity and when you are getting past all them traumas and things that hurt you, and it don't even have to be about parents, it could be about anything, whatever it is that you're getting over. You might have loved a job really bad and you got fired, and now you can't appreciate your new job or whatever. Getting over things that hurt you are very hard, because you always think about what was. You are your own worst enemy in your progress, because your memories, like, you can't tell your brain not to remember the good things too, because in every bad situation there's so much good to be had. But sometimes that bad is, even if it's this small, is just so heavy that you don't want to carry that on in your life. So I really don't actually remember what you asked me, but I hope I answered it.
No, you're You're fine. And so I was asked, I what I asked was about forgiveness, but you kind of touched on
Okay.
that. And like you said, really having to know what your triggers are
Yeah.
and know what situations not to put yourself in. And I think that is really the true beginning of healing, is to know
Yeah.
not how to constantly keep getting burned by the same fire. And
And
it
you know
doesn't
what?
mean,
Just being okay with saying, I forgive you, but that don't mean I gotta forget what you did to me and I don't have to come back. I ain't gotta keep beefing with you unless, like I said, I ain't gotta keep beefing with you. But cool. We good. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. And I think that is what's mostly important, because I think a lot of times we feel like forgiveness has to look a certain way, healing
Yeah.
has to look a certain way. And I always tell people there is no cookie cutter way of how you are going to come out on the other side of this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love that. And so what I want you to do is you can just take a couple minutes and talk to that person who has a similar story as you. Talk to that person who is trying to break those generational things. They're trying to heal, trying to overcome trauma to any degree. If you could do that and just kind of speak some life into them, I know it would be very valuable.
Ooh, girl, you harmonicas, right? Oh wait, harmonica, ain't it this or is it this one? That's a violin. Harmonica's this one. But no, seriously, all jokes aside, I just want anybody out there to know who is going through a tough time and whatever traumas you're trying to overcome, that don't be afraid to live in your truth. But past that, you a lot of times when you're in a situation, you really do feel like you're alone. You feel like you don't have anybody. You might look around and be like, hey, well, I don't have any friends or whatever. I really challenge you to not only educate yourself in the things that you're going through. For myself specifically, I went to therapy and I learned that I was a type of person. And I never thought of myself as a type, but I learned about an organization for adult children of alcoholics. And I never thought I was a type kid. But when I looked at what that looked like in the structure of it, I realized there's this whole world of people out there who were just like me and my siblings, and even though I had my siblings in these situations, I still felt like, well, it's just me, even though I knew that they had gone through, things themselves too. But I really challenge anybody who is there is to educate yourself and not get stuck. You are not whatever it is that you come from, and I know I have been told, you forget where you come from. Well, it's not that I forgot where I came from. It's just that I know where I'm going. And for me, it's very important to know where I'm going. And you should know where you're going to, and know that your circle loves you. And so when they say things or when they encourage you to do certain stuff, it's not that people don't feel like you can manage it on your own or you need to be babied or anything like that. It's just that sometimes people see in you so much more than what you see in yourself. And this has been a this year, it just started, but it's been a year where I've even run into strangers who speak so much about me and the things that they see in me that I had to start sitting in the mirror being like, okay, what is it that these people see? And I know what I see, but stepping into my greatness too, so that I can love me not only for myself, but seeing myself through other people's lenses was important because we really are our own worst critics. So, first and foremost, if I could leave you with only one thing, is to love yourself because you're gonna go that extra mile once you learn to love you for you, not you for who your teacher see you as, your grandma, your cousins, whoever, but you for exactly who you are and who you are, and then you let the world see that. And it's gonna be people who gonna be like, that's fake, that's money, this ain't real, she not like this, she not like that, she wasn't like that in high school. None of that matters. You have to do you because the people who are out there are for you and they're gonna flock to you. That's the thing about growth and tribes and just finding your circle. I didn't have to work hard to find my best friends. I didn't have to work hard to find anything that was for me. As we got older, my relationships with family and cousins grew, and it wasn't forceful. We wasn't beating each other up to make it happen. We just did it. And I think that, people want things so bad that you try and force them. But once your energy is right where it needs to be, everything's going to come to you. So love yourself first and just do the work and be accountable, but don't let your circumstances hold you back either.
I want to thank you so much for sharing. I always say this to people, but we definitely can have, part 2, 3, and 4, just because there are so many different topics that we could have branched off on and had
Yeah.
30-minute conversations just on those topics. But I really want to thank you for your transparency. I really appreciate you being able to share your story, because I tell people all the time, it is not easy to sit down and talk about things that you've overcome, because you kind of have to take yourself back to that place to
Yeah.
relive the moments in order to be able to share those. So I really appreciate that. I love you. I thank you so much for being a guest on Unmute Your Mic. And I'm going to put all of your information down below so people can connect with you,
Yes,
see
please
what else
do.
you're doing, if they have questions, if they need any advice. Because I always tell people, when you go through something, it is not just for you.
Yeah.
And
No.
so when even if we're not completely on the other side yet, we're at a place where we can help and turn around and walk somebody else through, so that they don't feel so lost and so alone like we may have felt when we had to
Yeah.
start, walking down that journey. So I just
Yeah.
want to thank you again, and I love you so much.
You are welcome. I love you so much too. Y'all don't judge me. I'm like the extra cousin. People see me online, they're like, that's got to be a persona, but I swear to God, I'm just like this in real life.
No, she's really like this.
Y'all should have seen me trying to kill this beetle bug.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also now join our website, unmuteyourmic.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter, see exclusive behind the scenes, learn a little bit more about the guests that I have on my show. And as always, be bold, be heard, and continue to unmute your mic.
Unmute it.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our communities.